Good morning to all of you. So we are going to study the remaining part of trends in pediatric and pediatric nursing. A third video also will be there because it is a big topic. So before I start the basic topic, I would like to tell the definition of trends. I should have told this the in the previous video, but this sorry that I've not included this slide in the first video. So what is trends? Our topic is trends. So unless and until we understand what is trends, we won't be able to justify it properly. So what is trends? Trends is a general direction in which something is developing or changing. कोई एक चीज़ है वो कैसे डेवलप हो रहा है या कैसे चेंज हो रहा है, that is trends. Okay. Now second definition according to Collins says a trend is a change or development towards something new or different. कोई चीज़ जब नया बन रहा है या कुछ अलग बन रहा है, then that is trends. So what we are now studying, what are the trends which are being taking place in the field of pediatric and pediatric nursing. This is our topic. So we are studying what changes have taken place, how and what are those different changes, and how is it that pediatrics has changed so much, and what are those changes. This is what we have already started to study. Okay, we have already studied family centered care. In this we have studied the two components, enabling and empowering. Okay, second we studied about atraumatic care, about many principles to be kept in mind about atraumatic care. Okay, now in this video we are going to study two things. One is child oriented environment and second is high technology care. These are the other trends, but we are not this is a repetition of what we had, same slide which I had shown in the previous ones. Okay, so these are the 10 trends: family centered care, high technology care, evidence based practice, primary nursing, case management, child oriented environment, atraumatic care, then cost containment, nursing process application, and ethics in pediatric nursing. So now we are going to study the third one. 2 is already over, family based learning. The first one is already over, family centered care and atraumatic care. Now we are going to start the child oriented environment. Okay, so from the word itself is the clear. When the child is brought to a hospital or admitted to a hospital, what are those measures which can be taken so that the child feels at home. होम जैसे तो पूरा एनवायरनमेंट नहीं रहेगा, पर हम क्या कर सकते हैं जिससे बच्चे को लगेगा कि हाँ भाई मैं होम से मैं कुछ को रिलेट कर सक रहा हूँ, या आई कैन रिलेट टू समथिंग विच इज़ एट होम. सो a child friendly healthcare is defined as the best possible healthcare provided by health workers who work together to minimize the fear, anxiety and suffering for children and their families. So all those measures which are taken by the health workers ताकि fear, anxiety and suffering not only for the child but also for the families can be minimized. So that is that steps are called as child oriented environment. So hospital admission can be very scary for the child, but the right environment can restore some normalcy during this time of healing. See, nobody I have already explained it earlier. Whenever if the child gets sick, so the child also suffers, and at the same time the family also suffers to a great extent, because parents are unable to see their child suffering. So pediatrics is such a field where we need to not only take care or focus our attention on the children, but also we need to focus the attention on the parents as well as significant caregivers. So hospital admission can be scary, but we have to make the environment to some extent so that some normalcy can be attained. So what can be done? First is involve the child during course of care. We have already dealt in the last part also. In atraumatic care also we have studied. Teach the description of the procedure or treatment that he or she will have to undergo. So again this will depend on the age of the child. Suppose if we are talking of a newborn baby, then nothing can be told to the newborn baby. But if the child is a infant, or if the child is a toddler, or maybe beyond that, naturally what the procedure, what are you going to do? So that has to be explained to the child in those terms in which the child can understand. Okay, so this will be informed to him in a way that can be suitable for the child's level of knowledge and understanding by using educational materials, presentations, drawings, and makes much easier for the child to participate while the procedure is being done. For example, if you are planning to take a blood sample, so suppose if the child is having a doll, so what can be done? We can use a syringe. Okay, we can use a plastic syringe, and then we can take the arm of the doll and show where are we going to prick and what are we going to do. Suppose if you are doing some dressing, then you can show in the doll, etc. Or you can draw. Suppose if the child is old enough now, it's the age of mobile smartphones. The child also will be having a mobile. You also are having a mobile. You can show different pictures in the mobile itself, maybe some videos, anything, any of these steps which can be used in a way in which the child is able to understand. Again, this will depend on the age of the child. Now, involvement of family during. So second part in this is involvement of the family. Let the patient know that the family will be with him or her along the way while the procedures. So that is very important in child friendly environment. It is very important to involve the parents. The child should know that the parents or maybe the mothers or any significant other or the family members will be with him during all the procedures. Okay, parents know the best strategy and how they could make the child cooperate with the procedure, as well as lessening the child fear about the whole hospital experience. In the previous class I have already told you, because see, these are the parents who have been handling the children at home, so they know how to handle the child. So once you inform the parents what is to be done, then the parents will ensure that the child cooperates. Again, this will depend on how old the child is. Suppose if the child is old enough to understand, so the parents will ensure that the child cooperates when the procedure to as far as possible. And once the parents are there with the child, it will lessen the child fear about the whole hospital experience. For example, if it's taking a chest x-ray, suppose if you imagine the parent is not allowed inside the chest x-ray, then will be very difficult for the child to cooperate. But if the parent is standing nearby, so the child will be cooperating, because the parents will be directing the child what is to be done. Third is, there is moreover increasing evidence that display of visual art, especially in images of nature, can have a positive effect on health outcome. Visual art means in some way which we can see. Can you see the CT scan machine? Some doll is there, so this tray is there, and child is involved, so they know how this MRI scan or a CT scan will be there. So this is visual effects. So the child knows that this is what is to be done. So research studies have found that if you display visual art, then they have positive effect on the health outcome, and this has been shown in terms of shorter length of stay in hospital, increased pain tolerance, and decreased anxiety. Okay, suppose you imagine the child requires a MRI or a CT scan, and if this type of things are shown to the child, and if the child is old enough, the child will be able to cooperate. Okay, so this is what the research studies have found out, that this, if you have visual art which is being used to explain to the children, so this causes shorter length of stay in the hospital, there is increased pain tolerance, and there is decreased anxiety. Next is the fourth point in maintaining child-oriented environment is permitting to bring items from home, such as toys, activities, and making more entertainment activities available, so that they could use without asking, with the view to have home-like setting in the hospital. See, two things can be done. One is, we can permit the family members to bring the favorite toys or dolls or anything which the child was playing at home. If it is portable enough, permit them to bring in the ward so that they can play. Or you can even have playroom in the hospital where the child can play there. Okay, so both things can be done. So by doing this, we can have a home-like setting in the hospital. Next, we have already completed the child-oriented environment. So, in maintaining child-oriented environment, first is we involve the child in the course of care, describe the procedure, what is to be done and how is to be done, all these things. Then we can involve the family. By involving the family, the stress in the child as well as the family members will be lessened, and the family members will, they know how the child can cooperate in the procedure. And third is we use visual art, which will cause shorter stay in the hospital, increased pain tolerance and decreased anxiety. So third point is already over. And allow play articles to be brought in the ward, as well as provide a playroom where the child can play. Now fourth point is health promotion and disease prevention. Now what do you mean by health promotion? Health promotion activities are those activities that increase the well-being and enhance the wellness और health. ठीक है, हेल्थ प्रमोशन का मतलब क्या है? वो एक्टिविटी जिससे आपका हेल्थ मेंटेन रहेगा या एनहेंस हो जाएगा. ओके, नाउ हाउ डज WHO define health promotion? It is a process of empowering people to increase control over their health and its determinants through health literacy efforts and sectoral action to increase healthy behavior. ठीक है, WHO कैसे डिफाइन कर रहा है? It is a process of empowering people to increase control over their health. Okay, now suppose if somebody is, if you imagine that the child is a case of diabetes mellitus, okay, or if a child is a case of nephrotic syndrome, okay, sorry, sorry, excuse me, this is not the right example. These are those steps which the people can increase to control over their health. Okay, we know that if you consume unhealthy foods or maybe unhealthy drinks, then people can suffer from diarrhea. So health promotion is all those, you empower the people by having the knowledge so that they increase control over their health and its determinants. We encourage the people to adopt all those healthy habits so that they are not hypertensive, they do not suffer from diabetes mellitus, they do not suffer from diarrhea, etc., etc. So these are this is a process of empowering people. And how do you empower people? By giving some knowledge. Okay, so many now is a age of mobile phones, and all information is there in the click of the mouse. Okay, once you click it, you get all the information. Suppose if you want to control hypertension, not control, how to prevent hypertension. So what you do is you do exercise, you control your weight, you ensure that you are not taking a fatty diet. So these are all the things which will ensure that you do not suffer from hypertension. So this is empowering people to increase control over their health and it determines through health literacy efforts. Health literacy is literacy means information to control all those things or different disease condition. उसको हम क्या कहते हैं? हेल्थ लिटरेसी का मतलब है कि कोई भी बीमारी से बचाने के लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, नाउ कोविड इज देयर. नाउ हाउ कैन what health promotion activities can be there? So we are taught to wear the mask, do a hand washing, maintain social distancing. So these three steps, and this is health literacy related to COVID. And once we adopt this health literacy, so this empowers us to fight against COVID. So this is similar to other diseases. Different diseases have different steps to be taken, and this is a multi-sectoral action to increase healthy behavior. So for health promotion, many activities needs to come into action. Okay, now what are the health promotion activities? They start in utero. Health promotion activities are there. What can be that? When a mother takes prenatal vitamins and refrains from drinking alcohol and smoking, and continue after the child is born when a mother breastfeeds and are addressed daily. Okay, so health promotion activities during pregnancy is when the mother is pregnant, she takes vitamins. In the previous class we have studied that if the mother is taking folic acid, then the chances of neural tube defects are decreased to a minimum. So this is why we give iron, so that the child does not suffer from iron deficiency anemia, and the child has enough stores in iron stores in the body. So the mother takes prenatal vitamins so that the child does not suffer from neural tube defects. Then she refrains from drinking alcohol so that the child does not suffer from fetal alcohol syndrome. The mothers does not smoke. Why? Because smoking may cause vasoconstriction, and vasoconstriction will cause IUGR, that is intrauterine growth retardation. So if the mother is not smoking, so she is reducing the chances of IUGR, and this continues when the child is born and when the mother is breastfeeding. So by breastfeeding the baby, all health promotion activities are there, because we know the advantages, and these are addressed daily, not on a day or two, but this continues. So next is parents make sure that the child snacks on fruit instead of junk food and plays outside rather than watches television. So these are another health promotion activities. If the parents ensure that the child is consuming fruit instead of junk food. Okay, so fruits are very healthy in comparison of junk food, because junk food causes many health issues. Okay, so if the parents are making sure that the child is eating fruit instead of junk fruit, and instead of watching television, the child is playing outside. So these are health promotion activities which are very beneficial for the child. Next is cost effective interventions include taking immunizations, recommending car seats or bicycle helmets. Okay, we take immunizations so that we do not suffer from disease. So this is another health promotion activities. Then recommending car seats. Okay, you must have seen pictures in the car, especially in abroad countries, where we have specific car seats available to carry newborns or maybe small children, which has the seat belts of its own. Okay, so these car seats are available, and when the child is bicycling, we ensure that the child wears a helmet, so that even if the child falls down, in childhood there are chances that the child may fall down, and when the child is falling down, the head injury can be prevented. So these are all cost effective interventions which can be taken. Next is health promotion activities are over. In health promotion, we started with the intake of prenatal vitamins by pregnant mother, cessation from alcohol and cessation and not taking also alcohol and smoking. Then continuing giving breastfeeding after the child is born, ensuring that the child is taking fruit instead of junk food, and the child plays outside instead of taking watching televisions. Then giving immunization, having a proper car seat for infants and preschoolers, toddlers, etc., and wearing a bicycle helmets. Now these are the health promotion activities. Now we have something called as anticipatory guidance and health maintenance. Now what is health maintenance? Health maintenance activities are those activities which preserve an individual state of present health, prevent disease or injury. Health maintenance are those activities जिससे क्या होगा, जो भी present health है, so that is preserved. Okay, उससे नीचे नहीं जा रहा है. We are ensuring that the disease is not occurring and injury is not occurring. Now what is anticipatory guidance? Anticipatory word से ही मतलब ये है कि कुछ होने वाला है आगे, उसके बारे में हम पहले से बता रहे हैं. For example, the child is suppose if the child is taking junk food. Okay, so we are telling that if the child is consuming a large amount of junk food, then there are chances of childhood obesity which can predispose to diabetes and hypertension. Okay, so this is anticipatory guidance. Anticipatory मतलब ही हुआ नहीं है, पर आगे ऐसा हो सकता है. So that is called as anticipatory guidance. Okay, anticipatory guidance is given for known potential health risks and seek to prevent them, including immunization. ठीक है, तो what we do is we anticipate that these things can occur in future, and all those steps which we take it today so that those things will not occur tomorrow. So that is called as anticipatory guidance. So this also includes immunization. This also includes immunization. Okay, I will give you an example of immunization. We take rubella vaccination for adolescent girls so that when these girls become pregnant in future, they do not suffer from congenital malformations, because rubella causes congenital malformation in the fetus if rubella occurs during pregnancy. Okay. Now we have health promotion and disease prevention. The next point is prevention. Prevention is divided to three aspects: primary, secondary and tertiary. We shall be discussing each of it. So services performed in clinical setting that is designed to prevent disease, injury or disability, prolong life and promote health are all preventive health services. इसमें क्या है, we all those steps which are taken to prevent a disease or injury or disability, all those steps which are taken to prolong life and promote health, these are all preventive health services, and we have three levels. First is primary prevention. So we know what is primary prevention. In primary prevention, disorder is actually prevented from developing. All those steps which are taken so before the development of a disease, all those steps which will ensure that this disease does not occur. So that is called as primary prevention. So first is by education of patient, family and caregiver. We have different issues related to this. So we need to educate the patient, family and caregiver. Okay. So what do? We promote vaccination. Okay. We know whenever the child is born, we tell these patients, immunization card is given to the child, that these are the immunizations, these are the diseases which are prevented, these are the different ages, and this is where you will get the vaccination. All these things are told. So that comes under primary vaccination. We give vaccines with an intention that that particular disease will not occur in future. Next is post exposure prophylaxis of children. Post exposure prophylaxis means suppose there is a patient of this HIV, mother is HIV positive. Okay, so child who is born of HIV positive infant is called as babies are called as HIV exposed infants. They are called as HIV exposed infants. So what we do is all children who are HIV exposed infants are given nevirapine. Okay, they are given nevirapine to the children. Okay, so what is the dose, etc. Once we study about pediatric HIV, we shall be studying all these things in detail. So post exposure prophylaxis means if you have a mother who is HIV positive, we know that the vaginal fluid is full of HIV virus. Okay, so when the baby is passing through the birth canal, there are chances that this baby can suffer from HIV. Okay, so we don't want that. So that is why we give medicines to the child so that the child does not suffer from HIV. So that is called as post exposure prophylaxis. Then provision of information on behavioral and health risk, measures to reduce risk at the individual population level. So all this behavioral and health risk, that is, we ensure that the child's growth is monitored, what is expected weight, what are the risks which are there, how they can be reduced. For example, not missing the breakfast, taking healthy diet, avoiding junk food, etc., etc. All these things. Okay. These are the measures which can be taken to reduce at the individual level as well as at the population levels. Nutritional assessment and guidance and food supplementation, including well balanced diet. So nutritional assessment is done. We know that, suppose if you take example of ICDS program, you must have seen in Anganwadi, which is our center of ICDS integrated child development scheme. So there we do the nutritional assessment. There also it is done by ASHA workers also. This is also done when the child comes for any checkup, etc. So nutritional assessment is done. So nutritional assessment, and based on nutritional assessment guidance and food supplementation, including well balanced diet, what to be eaten, how to be eaten, all these things are told. So these all are included in primary prevention. Okay. Next is dental hygiene. Okay, we can use different models like this and teach how the teeth is to be cleaned. So dental hygiene education and oral health services are also included, because whatever we eat can even cause, suppose if a dental hygiene is not so good, so even endocarditis can be caused due to that. So that is why dental hygiene education is very important, so that the child does not suffer from dental caries, which can predispose for different diseases. Next is injury prevention. In relation to injury prevention, this includes two things. One is car safety. Car safety means we have specialized car seats available for small children, so that can be used. Poison prevention is we educate the parents not to keep the medicines or maybe pesticides, insecticides which can be within reach of the children. So this is how poison can, because these are very poisonous for the child. So this is how we prevent the poisons. Okay, and we also keep the child safe from insect bites also. Next is child abuse prevention. So Stewards of Children Training Program is a program where people who are working with the children, they can identify what are the signs and symptoms of child abuse. This is specially for sexual abuse. This training program is specially for sexual abuse, so that they can identify and take steps how to manage and prevent sexual abuses. So that is child abuse is of different. One of them is sexual abuse, and Stewards of Children Training Program is a program specially focused on sexual abuse. Okay. Now, reduce disease transmission by hand hygiene, sanitization. The toys can be sanitized, surfaces can be cleaned properly. These are all primary prevention. This is not only related to COVID, but also related to diarrhea also. Then exercise program can be planned. So that is why first from when the child is in school, we have physical activity and also sports activity, and we have during interval where the child can run about and play. Okay, so these are all different exercise program. Then comprehensive tobacco prevention program. This is done in adolescent boys and girls. Okay, so tobacco can be consumed by children. So if you can sensitize the adolescent girls and boys, so they can take step to not to consume the alcohol, not to consume the tobacco. Okay, so this is this is comprehensive tobacco prevention program. Okay, which is done among adolescent boys and girls, so that they are not consuming, and once they are empowered with knowledge, they can transmit the knowledge from them to their parents if they are consuming, or even their family members. So they can act as a change agent in ensuring that they themselves don't take tobacco, and they can refer, if family members are there, they can refer for tobacco prevention programs. Now is secondary prevention. In secondary prevention, disease that has not yet become symptomatic is detected and treated early, thereby minimizing serious consequences. See, if the first step is fully successful, then second prevention won't come. Secondary prevention starts when you have there are full chances that disease can be there, but full symptoms are not yet detected, but you take steps to find out whether disease is already developed or not. So what can you have? Population based screening program for early detection of diseases. For example, what we do is in the schools, we check the BP, we check the eye, we do eye test, we do hearing test, etc. Why are we doing this? So these are all population based screening program. So we do this population screening program, so that we can identify whether the child is having some vision problems, or is the child having hearing problems. So all these things physical checkup can be done whether the child is having obesity or whether the child is hypertensive. So, all these things population based screening programs can be done, so that so that we can identify whether the child is having child is having a disease or not. In secondary prevention, we have lot many things what we are doing. So, provision of maternal child health program including screening and prevention of congenital malformations, newborn screening is there, vision and hearing screening, iron deficiency anemia screening, development screening, in which we do now we have Denver 2 assessment. We screen for autism and hypertension school screening. Now, what is it? We shall be studying these subsequent slides. So, first is screening for neural tube defects. So, neurotic defects can be diagnosed before birth by ultrasound, by amniocentesis or chorionic villi sampling, that is CVS. Okay. These are amniocentesis and chorionic villi sampling is done under ultrasound guidance. Okay. We take the mother for ultrasound, then we use a SIM speculum, and through that we pass the probe by or the syringe, and we take the sample maybe of the amniotic fluid. For amniotic fluid, no need to have the SIM speculum, you can directly take the sample from above, but if it is chorionic villi sampling, then we need this, we need an ultrasound probe, and then you use a SIM speculum and then we introduce the probe. So, that is chorionic villi sampling. Next is we measure maternal serum alpha fetoprotein, that is maternal serum AFP, okay, MS-AFP level by blood test checks for open neural tube defects. For open neural tube defects, what happens is, if you take a sample of the mother, by seeing the alpha fetoprotein levels, we can identify whether the child is having spina bifida. Okay. So, 80% of the time when spina bifida anencephaly, then there is chances of more higher AFP values. Okay. So, if there is higher AFP values, this indicates that the child is a case of spina bifida or it is a cases of anencephaly. If it is a lower count, then this indicates Down syndrome. Okay. So, we take a maternal blood, and by taking a maternal blood you can identify. We can also identify these things by ultrasound, amniocentesis and chorionic villi sampling. So, this was for neural tube defects. And for Down syndrome, we can have a chromosomal test by using her blood. The mother blood carries DNA from the fetus, and we know that Down syndrome is trisomy 21, and this can be identified. Another test is percutaneous umbilical blood sampling, that is PUBS, which takes a sample from the umbilical cord, and PUBS gives most accurate diagnosis of Down syndrome during pregnancy. Suppose if you do ultrasound and you are able to find out, you see for serum AFP if the values are low, but if you want to confirm it, then you can use this percutaneous umbilical blood sampling. So, this is how it is done. So, this is ultrasound transducer, and this is the fetal the cord. Okay. So, what we take is we take a fetal blood sample. Okay. So, this is how this is the baby is. Okay. So, this is image of percutaneous umbilical blood sampling. Now, next is newborn screening test. These are different chromosomal abnormalities which can cause which can be found out by neonatal screening. Okay. Phenylketonuria, congenital hypothyroidism, galactosemia, sickle cell disease, maple syrup urine disease, homocystinuria, biotinidase deficiency, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So, these are all topics in itself. I am not going into detail of any of it, because we will be studying this in our genetic screening also. Okay. So, these are the different tests which can be done. Okay. So, this is a diagram. This is done when a baby is 24 to 48 years. We can take a heel prick sample, and you can check for different screening. We can even have a hearing test, pulse oximetry, etc. So, these are different newborn screening tests. Then apart from that, we have vision and hearing screening, which is done when the child is between 2 to 2.5 years old. So, hearing test is simple pass or fail. We have we just identify whether the child is having normal hearing or not. So what we do is, there is a series of beeps and tones, and we check whether the child is able to hear or not. Vision screening is similar to that. You all must have undergone vision screening, you know all these things. Snell's chart, this is a Snell's chart. So vision screening includes routine eye examination to diagnose and treat eye disorders. Okay, so this is vision and hearing screening. Then there is iron deficiency anemia screening. Serum hemoglobin and hematocrit is the primary screening test for iron deficiency. Okay, HB is sensitive in detecting iron deficiency anemia. We do a HB test. And if you are interested to know the iron stores, then we measure serum ferritin level. So serum ferritin level is the most accurate test to diagnose iron deficiency anemia, because this also gives information about the availability of iron store. Body में iron stores कितना है वो पता करने के लिए we do a serum ferritin. Now what is the difference between hemoglobin and hematocrit? Hemoglobin तो आपको पता ही है, RBC में we have hemoglobin, so we check that. And what is hematocrit? It is the percentage of RBCs in that particular sample. ठीक है, 1 ml में कितना परसेंटेज ऑफ RBCs है, दैट इज हेमाटोक्रिट. ओके, तो एनीमिया में क्या होगा, हेमाटोक्रिट कम रहेगा. ओके, एंड हेमाटोक्रिट में परसेंटेज ऑफ RBCs है. हीमोग्लोबिन में RBC के अंदर जो हीमोग्लोबिन है वो कितना ग्राम है, दिस इज 1 डेसीलीटर पर ग्राम पर डेसीलीटर वी चेक. एंड फेरिटिन लेवल से हमको क्या पता चलता है, वी नो व्हाट आर द आयरन स्टोर्स अवेलेबल इन द बॉडी. ठीक है, now we have a gold standard for checking iron deficiency anemia, that is bone marrow biopsy specimen. Okay, bone marrow biopsy specimen is taken to and this bone marrow bone marrow biopsy specimen, we can get we can do a iron test, presence of to what extent iron is present or not. So this can be done by bone marrow biopsy specimen, and this is gold standard. Once you do this, then we do not need all these things. Okay, so this is are the available iron deficiency anemia screening. Okay, then we had Denver development screening test. This is not done for all children, but we use this for those children who are having slow developments in infants and preschool children. So 4 areas are there: gross motor, language, fine motor, adaptive, personal and social. So these are the 4 different areas which are used to those children who are having a slow development. Okay, who are having a slow development. So now we have Denver development screening test second. This is what we are using now. Next is autism screening. So diagnosing autism spectrum disorder can be difficult because we don't have a specific test, and by the time the child is 2 years, then an experienced person can do this, and which is very reliable. So we have there is a specific tool for that. The tools which is used for development and behavioral screening are questionnaires and checklist, and we what we do is we check for child's language, movement, thinking, behavior and emotions. Okay, language, movement, thinking, behavior and emotions. So these are the different areas which are checked in autism screening. Now what are the early signs of autism? Avoiding eye contact. Okay, the child, if you look to the eyes, the child will not be looking. Having little interest in other children or caretakers, the child will be playing alone. Okay, the child will not be interested in what others are doing, or the child will not be interested to know what the caretaker is doing. Limited display of language. Okay, the child will be using very few words as compared to others, and the child is having difficulty with use of words for communication. The child is unable to use words for communication. Okay. Next is getting upset by minor changes in routine. All children have their own routine activities which are carried out every day. If minor changes are there, then the child gets upset. Okay. This is another slide on autism. The child will be very hyperactive. The child will not be able to identify whether the child is in danger or not. Suppose if this vehicle is coming, the sound is there, but the child is not moving to sides. Then rejecting cuddles. Cuddles means कोई गले लगाना चाहे, बच्चे को उठाना चाहे, then the child does not like others to cuddle him. फिर साउंड टॉलरेट नहीं कर सकेगा, ठीक है. देयर इज इंटॉलरेंस टू साउंड. द चाइल्ड विल बी डिप्रेस्ड. हिस्टेरिकल अटैक विल बी टेयर एंड द चाइल्ड विल बी टिप टोइंग मतलब पैर के पंजों पर चलना. दैट इज कॉल्ड एज टिप टोइंग. सो दीज आर द डिफरेंट साइन एंड सिम्टम्स ऑफ ऑटिज्म. So if you see the sign and symptoms, then you can have a autism screening test. In autism screening, we see for those sign and symptoms. Then there is a developmental monitoring where milestones. We know that different age have different milestone. कब बैठा, कब उठा, कब बिना support के बैठा, all these things. So these are all specific milestones. So we check for. We have a checklist of milestones. In developmental monitoring, we check the milestones. Second is development screening. In development screening, we use formal questionnaires and checklists based on child's development, which includes language, movement, thinking, behavior and emotions. So these are the different areas which are checked in development screening. Development monitoring में हम लोग सिर्फ milestones check कर रहे हैं, but in development screening we are checking the child's language, movement, thinking, behavior and emotions. Next we have hypertension school screening. Okay, so blood pressure is seen. Suppose we know how to plot a road to health chart abhi now, because Anu madam is already taking class on growth and development. जब हम लोग weight chart करते हैं, okay, so we have percentile charts जिसमें 10% भी है, 90% भी है, और okay, so we have अगर स्मॉल फॉर डेट बेबीज आइडेंटिफाई करना है तो दे विल बी लेस देन 10 परसेंटाइल्स. हाइपरटेंशन इज कॉमन इन दोज बेबीज हु आर मोर देन 90 परसेंटाइल. ओके, तो 90% से ज़्यादा बच्चे 90 परसेंटाइल से ज़्यादा है, then the chances for hypertension is more. So it has been seen that if at birth if somebody is above 90%, there are maximum chance that the child will remain overweight even during adulthood. Now according to American Heart Association, this is how they have identified the BP. We have normal BP, elevated BP, stage 1 high BP and stage 2 high BP. Normal BP is systolic less than 120, diastolic less than 80. We know that we keep it. So this is more or less for adolescents. For newborns, preschool, we have different normal blood pressure values, but hypertension is an issue during in school going children and adolescent children. Okay, so American Heart Association has divided hypertension to all this. Now what is elevated BP? Between systolic between 120 to 129 and diastolic is still less than 80. Stage 1 stage 1 BP is systolic is 130 to 139 and diastolic is between 80 to 89, and stage 2 systolic is 140 or above and 90 or above is diastolic. Okay, so these are the different types according to American Heart Association. So if the blood pressure is there, we need to find out the cause. To find out the cause, we need to have the different test. Okay, आपने बीपी चेक किया, बीपी बढ़ा मिला, तो आपको कारण पता करना पड़ेगा कि why is the BP high. So for that we need to have different tests. So first is electrolytes, blood urine, nitrogen, creatinine level. So ये सब हम इसलिए पता करते हैं to find out whether kidney is being involved or not. Okay, so for example potassium, this increases the contractility of the heart. अगर हाइपरकेलीमिया है तो कॉन्ट्रैक्टिलिटी बहुत ज़्यादा रहेगा. ओके, सो वी नीड टू मेजर द इलेक्ट्रोलाइट्स. देन लिपिड प्रोफाइल, हमको मालूम है कि वी डू अ लिपिड प्रोफाइल इन एम्प्टी स्टमक टू नो उनका डिफरेंट लेवल्स ऑफ कोलेस्ट्रॉल कैसा है, लिपिड डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ लिपिड कैसा है. ओके, all these things can be done, and apart from that we have special test for hormones of adrenal glands. Okay. This in lipid profile, I would like to add that there are different tests, like we check for HDL, that is high density lipoprotein, triglyceride, LDL, that is low density lipoprotein. So these are the things we check. So in lipid profile, what are the things we check? We check for cholesterol, we check for HDL, that is high density lipoprotein, we check for low density lipoprotein, as well as triglyceride. So these are the things we check for lipid profile. Then we have a special tests which are done for adrenal glands or thyroid glands. And what are those tests? For adrenal glands, adrenals are suprarenal glands. Okay. So we have a test which is called as ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. We use this hormone when we were studying about in ACN, in compensatory mechanism. Okay. So ACTH stimulation test is done to this is the most specific test for diagnosing adrenal insufficiency, whether adrenal glands is not functioning properly. If you want to find out, then we do this ACTH stimulation test. Okay. So blood cortisol levels are measured before and after a synthetic form of ACTH. Synthetic matlab artificial. Okay. We know that ACTH causes formation of cortisol. तो हम क्या कर रहे हैं? We are giving ACTH and we check the level of cortisol before and after the injection of ACTH. Okay. So this is a synthetic form. Synthetic matlab the artificial form of ACTH. नहीं तो normally ACTH एंटीरियर पिट्यूटरी से निकलता है, पर आप ये देखना चाह रहे हैं कि एड्रीनल ग्लैंड्स काम कर रहा है कि नहीं. सो व्हाट वी डू इज वी गिव अ इंजेक्शन ऑफ ACTH. ACTH देने के पहले वी चेक फॉर कॉर्टिसोल लेवल. व्हाई आर वी चेकिंग फॉर कॉर्टिसोल लेवल? क्योंकि ACTH से कॉर्टिसोल बनता है. सो इफ ACTH के इंजेक्शन देने से बन रहा है, नहीं बन रहा है, ऑल दिस थिंग्स कैन बी फाइंड आउट. हमारा बेसिक इंटेंशन क्या है? वी आर ट्राइंग टू फाइंड आउट whether adrenal insufficiency is there or not. Okay. और cortisol हमको stress में मदद करता है. To control the level of stress, cortisol helps. Now we have another test which is called as insulin induced hypoglycemia test. Okay. So in insulin induced hypoglycemia test helps us to determine how the hypothalamus, pituitary and adrenal glands respond to stress. So by doing this for this test, what we do is we check the blood glucose and cortisol level, and followed by injection of fast acting insulin. We know that we have slow acting and fast acting insulin. So we give fast acting insulin and then we check. Okay. Adrenal glands also maintain the blood sugar levels. Okay. In that way, this is insulin induced hypoglycemia test. Okay. So blood glucose and cortisol levels are measured again at 30, 45 and 90 minutes after the insulin injection. Okay. So normal response is for blood glucose level to fall and cortisol level to rise. Okay. So once you give high acting insulin, what we expect is the blood glucose should fall, because by giving insulin the blood sugar falls. Cortisol should increase. This is what we expect after fast injection of fast acting insulin. Now for thyroid test, we have different thyroid tests. First most is thyroid stimulating hormone. It measures the thyroid stimulating hormone, and this helps us to know whether the thyroid activity is maintained or not. If you are interested to know the hormone levels, we have T3 and T4. These are the thyroid hormones. We check for the levels. Apart from that, we have TSI, that is thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin. Okay. So thyroid stimulating hemoglobin is checked. Thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin. Okay. This is antibodies which are present. So for checking this, we do this TSI and anti-thyroid antibody test. We also measures the antibody, which are the markers in the blood. Okay. So, these are the different thyroid tests which is being done. Next is hypertension school screenings. So, we check for causes of high BP by urine test for electrolyte hormones, and we check for the fundus examination by using an ophthalmoscope, which is non-invasive. Non-invasive painless eye examination to check for ocular damage, because we know that hypertension causes retinopathy. Okay, so we check that. Then we go for nephropathy also for that, ultrasound for kidneys, CT scan for abdomen, both to assess damage, enlargement of kidneys and adrenal glands. All these things are checked. So these are not checked for all, but these are checked for those children who are having hypertension. Then if you are interested to know if the heart is being affected, so we do ECG. ECG we know is a non-invasive test, and this helps to find out whether there is damage in heart muscle, whether heart attack or what we call as myocardial infarction. Studies are there which gives indication that myocardial infarction can occur even in a 6-year-old child. Okay, so it's not a condition which can occur only in adults, but this, even though it is rare, but it can occur. Okay, so ECG gives us a record of it as an electrical activity of the heart, and this, by doing this, we can find out whether the heart muscles are affected, especially after the myocardial infarction, whether hypertrophy of heart wall is there, or the muscles, and this is there which acts as a complication of hypertension. Now, if we are interested to know in detail, so what we have a test which is called as echocardiogram. This is a diagram of echocardiogram. Again, it is a non-invasive method. So, we know that it has a blue color and red color, which gives us we can also find out the whether some problems are there in the heart. Okay, this is also this test is also done to use the congenital heart defects, because now our topic is related to hypertension. So, this helps to know whether the heart is enlarged, whether there is abnormalities in the motion of heart walls. If some blood clots is there, we can find out heart valve abnormalities. If it is there, we can find out ejection fraction. Ejection fraction means to what extent is the right ventricle and left ventricle ejecting the blood. Okay, so these all can be found out by echocardiogram. Next, if you are interested to know whether the blood vessels are affected, this is a diagram of Doppler study. We do a Doppler ultrasound to check the blood flow through arteries at pulse point is their arms, legs, hands and feet. So, this all can be find out, and to find out the peripheral vascular disease. Again, this is done if the child is a case of hypertension. This are done to find out whether these things have already taken place or not. Now, in health promotion, the last is tertiary prevention. Tertiary prevention, the disease has already occurred. So, those steps which are taken to minimize the severity of the disease, so that is called as tertiary prevention. This implies restoration or rehabilitation, managing chronic diseases and prevent them from progressive. And what is the aim? We want a optimal functioning. We want to avoid disability and complications, for example, in diabetes and childhood asthma management. So, there are many steps which are taken to manage the diabetes, so that the child does not have ketoacidosis in future. Asthma, there is no triggering of asthma attacks. All this asthma in itself is a big topic. So, when we study asthma, we shall be studying what are the points to be kept in mind. So, here in tertiary prevention, the child already is diagnosed as a case of asthma, child is already diagnosed as a case of juvenile diabetes mellitus. So, what steps can you take to prevent those things? For example, the child even suppose if the child is a case of sickle cell disease, you do a blood test, Sticklin test, you find out that the child is a case of sickle disease. What you want is the child should not have sickle cell crisis. So, all those steps which can be taken to prevent sickle cell crisis, for example, not going out to the sun. Suppose if the child is going covering himself, taking lot of water, avoiding going to those places which have less oxygen, for example, in high altitudes. The child should not go to places in high altitudes. So, all these are different measures which can be taken by the child to prevent sickle cell crisis. So, that is tertiary prevention. So, we have specific population, for example, all those steps which are taken by thalassemia group. So, this is a population of thalassemia, different diseases have different population. Then next is what are the essential elements? We have ongoing disease education and management and minimizing disease progression. So, depending on the stage the child is, different education is given to the parents as well as to the child, so that complications do not occur. And what is a primary objective? To reduce the negative impact of known disease by restoring function and reducing disease related complications. So, that is the primary objective. And pediatric rehabilitation unit is there. For example, physical occupational speech therapy after a catastrophic injury. For example, the child has met with an accident. So, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapist can come into force, so that they can help the child to be have an optimal life as far as possible. Next is disaster preparedness. In terms of it, safe housing, counseling and physical care are given. Now, the last point in this slide is high technology care. So, the nurse also needs to be technologically competent enough to meet the nursing care of children. Now, pediatric ICUs and NICUs have many new machines. So, all those nurses who are working in these areas should be competent enough to handle these things. Suppose if you are working in an ICU or a PICU, so the nurses are expected to learn competence in relation to managing ventilators and other procedures as well. So, advancement in diagnostic technology has made detection of many disorders even in fetal period. So, there are for example, neural tube defects, so they can be detected. Now, even fetal surgeries are also being done in cases of diaphragmatic hernia, etc. Okay. So, nurses have been users of technology and facilitators for gaining patient acceptance for technology. So, nurses, because it is a part of the healthcare, so they are users of technology and facilitators. And suppose this, for example, pulse oximetry. Pulse oximetry was something which was only used in chest wards, but now almost in every home pulse oximetry is there. So, nurses who are there in these areas, they are teaching all those patients who are admitted how to use this pulse oximetry, so that they can check the oxygen saturation. Okay. Now, this technology is designed to minimize errors and buffer the consequences by eliminating errors and adverse events. For example, we have good technology available, for example, infusion pump. So, we can give, suppose if you want to give specific doses in specific duration, if it is done by a human being, then there are maximum chances for human errors, especially in cases of pediatrics, where small mistakes can even take the life of the child. Okay. So, by using a high technology, we can eliminate the errors and adverse effects, reducing the occurrence of errors and adverse events, detecting the errors early before injury occurs. For example, you must have seen in ICU that alarm systems are there. So, by seeing the alarm, we can identify whether some problem is there or not, and then mitigating the effects of error. Once you identify some errors is there, you can take some steps to minimize the injury. Now, patient care technology offers many opportunities to improve nurse productivity and satisfaction. Because of high technology, the nurses are able to take care of the child to a great extent. So, the productivity increases because you have modern machines, operational efficiency is good, the patients are satisfied, safety issues and quality care be given, and the nurses have to be technologically versatile by keeping herself updated by attending continuing nursing education programs as well as computer skill. Now is the age of computers. So, all nurses who are working in high technology areas, they have to attend different continuing education program. Suppose if a new ventilator is coming to an ICU or a PICU, so the companies who are providing the ventilators, so what they do is they have education class for the doctors and nurses, so that they know how to handle the machines and how to check, how to function, how to switch it on, all these things are told. So not only ICUs, operation theatres and all those areas wherever nurses are there, where high technology things are used. So that was all about this topic. I hope you have understood. So in this topic we have basically concentrated on the child friendly setup. We have also discussed about the high technology care, and we have also discussed about health promotion and guidance. Okay. So this was all about today's topic. Our topic is still not completed. We will complete the remaining things in the next slide. So thank you for a patient listening. Thank you.